What's going on, guys? It's Dave Haas here with the Rise Up Rich podcast. Today I'm flying solo, and I just wanted to bring you guys some amazing value today. And I thought the best way I could do that was to talk a little bit about my own personal journey around addiction and overcoming addictions in my life. Now, this is somewhat of a controversial subject, especially because I own a bar, which is kind of hilarious that I find myself talking about addiction and helping people with addiction. But ultimately, everything in life happens for a reason, and everything is moving you closer to achieving for you to achieve your maximum potential. And the things that happened in my life were the things that happened in the exact order that they needed to happen, so that I could learn what I needed to learn in order to help other people. So today, I just want to take you down my journey around addiction and how it had a profound impact, and it changed my life 100% completely. I was living a life before where I thought I had it all. I thought I was, the man. I was, I owned a bar. I was making okay money. It wasn't great money, but I was making enough money to party and have fun. I was surrounded by girls. I was partying with my buddies. We're hanging out. Parties after the bar. It was like just this really amazing lifestyle. And from the outside looking in, a lot of people would think, this guy's living the life. He's living the dream. And I thought I was living the dream. But what I didn't realize is that I was, broken on many, many levels. And I had a complete lack of awareness around what needed to change in my life for me to be truly happy. So I've been running the bar probably for about 12 years at this point. I've been in the bar business since I was 18. I started bartending at Rush Nightclub downtown Windsor, and I just really fell in love with the bar atmosphere. And I was bartending. I was making all kinds of money. I ended up banking a bunch of that money and ended up investing into my own bar, the Treehouse Bar and Grill, which downtown. I had good success with it when I was fully focused on just Treehouse. I doubled the sales in 3 years, but I still wasn't really making any real money. I was grinding really hard in my eyes, which at that time I thought I was grinding. I felt like I was working crazy hours. And I just wasn't ever really getting ahead. I then went and expanded. I opened up a high-end fast food restaurant called Black Kettle Bistro. I opened up another nightclub with some partners, Symbol Nightclub, and then I opened up another bar, which was called the Well House. And very quickly, I came to the realization that I had spread myself too thin. The thing that had made me successful at Treehouse was that I was there and I was focused. I had a fixed focus on making Treehouse a successful business. And once I spread that fixed focus out, things started to really fall apart for me. Black Kettle Bistro wasn't making enough money. It was busy, but we didn't have a dinner crowd. Symbol was starting to turn a corner, but we were running out of cash. Well House had all kinds of issues. And eventually I made a decision that we had to close back Black Kettle Bistro, a decision with me and my partners. We sold Symbol at a loss, and we ended up closing the Well House. And during this time, I came to this realization that if I didn't get my life together, if I didn't get my life on track, I was going to lose everything that I had ever had. And this idea around alcohol and around drinking, it started rearing its head to me. The truth began to become revealed to me. I had created some serious awarenesses in my life. The first was around food. I talked about this in the last podcast. Once I started coming to the awareness of the food that I was putting into my body, that awareness sparked on a curiosity around having more awarenesses. And I started digging deep into the reasons behind why I drank alcohol. And my business partner at the time, Andrew Facca, who created a documentary called Voyage to Betterment, which basically documents my journey from being a meat-eating, beer-drinking guy and turning me into a vegetarian non-drinker. And you can check out that on his website, Voyage to Samyana, SAMYANA.com. You can watch that movie for $5. And in that movie, I start to come to some realizations that my drinking habits might be the source of not being happy in this world. So while I was doing Andrew's 30-day challenge, I went to see this healer. She's a local Windsor healer. Her name's Paula. I'll try and put a link to her website in the description to this podcast, and you can check her out. And I started asking some questions around this alcohol. Like, I didn't think I had an alcohol problem. I never drank at home. I just kind of always drank casually with friends. But I knew I was starting to push the limits. I had gotten into business with some other bar owners, and they had the same schedule as me, and we started, having more fun. And I really started pushing the limits and the boundaries of what was acceptable with alcohol. Alcohol got me into a lot of trouble, sleeping with the wrong girls and sleeping with girlfriends, maybe not friends, girlfriends, but friends of friends. And I lost some friends because of it. Things started getting like, it became an issue. People started noticing. So I wasn't really at a point where I was admitting it, but I was becoming aware that alcohol was holding me back from achieving my maximum potential. So I went to Paula and I said to her, I said, what do you think is going on with my drinking? Because I learned that Paula was able to, through treatments, get to the root of of any issue, be it a sore throat, a common cold, or even bigger issues, just by placing her hands on me. And so I said, hey, if you can get to the root of these issues, why don't you get to the root of my drinking? And she said to me in that treatment, she said, well, I see it, it's self-doubt. And when she said that, it just basically went right over my head. This was in 2005. She said self-doubt, and I had no clue what she meant by self-doubt. I just was like completely unaware what was going on. I felt like I was a very confident person. I felt that there was nothing in this world that I couldn't achieve if I set my mind to it. So why was self-doubt coming into play around alcohol? So as time went on, I started kind of building a picture, and I explained this to friends about the game Light-Brite. If you remember what a Light-Brite was as a kid, you kind of build this picture with these little pegs in this Light-Brite. And I was building the picture. I read a few books based around addiction, and I came to the realization I had to answer the question of why I drank. And I wasn't making the connection yet between what Paula had said, self-doubt, and the true root issue around alcohol. So as I'm kind of building this Light-Brite, I'm building to the story, I'm adding to my awareness behind the root issue of my alcohol use. One night I was out, I was in my club symbol that I owned, and I got introduced to this really cool guy. His name was Ronnie, and he was just like me. He was in the bar business for a long time. He was into mixed martial arts, like I was actually, who was at really high level mixed martial arts. He was also like the life of the party. Like, everyone wanted to be around him. Everyone wanted to listen to his stories. He had lived in the Cayman Islands for a long time, and everyone wanted to talk to him. And I'm like, this guy's so cool. And the kicker was that he didn't drink alcohol. And pretty much, after, a few conversations with him, pretty much in that moment, I came to the awareness that I was drinking alcohol because it made me cool. And I was scared, or I had self-doubt, that if I quit drinking alcohol, I would no longer be cool. So in that moment, I basically was able to turn on the Light-Brite, and I was able to see the whole entire picture that I had created. And I could see all of my hangups, and everywhere where I was using alcohol to impress others, where I was using alcohol to break down the walls, to be who I truly was. And from that moment right there, when I flicked on the light to the Light-Brite, I made the decision that I was going to quit drinking alcohol, and I set a date, and I partied like a rock star right up into that date, and I quit drinking, and I've never gone back. It's been almost 8 years now that I haven't had any alcohol. And after I quit drinking alcohol, that was really just the beginning of the realizations and the awarenesses that started coming to me. One of the big ones that came to me was this idea around why I wanted to make money and why I wanted to be successful. And ultimately what I learned was that alcohol was allowing me to be who I truly was. And that's why alcohol is addictive. It's not addictive. The substance of alcohol is actually not that addictive. What's addicting is the feeling of euphoria that comes from alcohol. And that feeling of euphoria comes from allowing yourself to be who you truly are. Now, if I look back at my life as a kid, when I was a kid and I would go to a wedding, I would be dancing on the dance floor all night long, talking to every single person, having the greatest time. I was the life of the party as a 9-year-old. And I just remember how much I loved that. As I grew older, as I started to build up those walls, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those walls, but as I started to build up those walls, I came closed in. And it wasn't until I started drinking alcohol that I was able to knock those walls down and go back to being that 9-year-old kid that was having a ton of fun and who was the life of the party again. Alcohol was allowing me to be who I truly was. What I had to figure out, and what I'm still actually figuring out, is how to be that person without a substance. So it's been this really interesting journey for me to continue to break down the walls to get back to who I truly am. So let me just get into the walls a little bit just to kind of break this down. And so one of the walls was I wanted to make money. And I've had this desire to make money for so long, and learning to let go of that desire is actually what ended up bringing wealth into my life. So on this journey and on this more profound level of awareness that I was experiencing because I had eliminated the substance, I started asking myself the question, why do I want to make money? And the way I get to answers is through meditation and by simply asking. A lot of us are having conversation. A lot of us are asking or praying to God for help when things get rough, or we're praying to the universe to bring things into our life. But a lot of us aren't listening, and I was definitely one of those people. And I learned through the technique of meditation that the answer to any question lies within us, and we can access that answer whenever we want. So I got really real with myself, and I started asking myself the question, why do I want to make money? And in that meditation, it brought me right back to this moment in grade school. So I'll just take you through the moment. I was in grade 5, so I don't know how old you are in grade 5, probably 10, 11 or something along those lines. And the 3 most popular girls in my class, and I went to a really small grade school. There was only like 30 kids in my class, and we stayed together from kindergarten all the way to grade 8. And the 3 most popular girls in my grade, if there's popularity in grade school, pulled me aside and they said, "Dave, you got to start taking better care of yourself. Like you're like the smelly kid in school." And they didn't use the exact words, "You're the smelly kid." They said it politely. And it was actually like a really great service that they did for me, because it was true. My mom had died when I was 9 years old. I was left kind of on my own. My dad was somewhat of an absentee parent. He did the best he could with what he knew how to do, but what he knew how to do just wasn't enough. And I didn't have the guidance that I needed as this 10, 11-year-old kid. So I was like in charge of doing my own laundry. I was in charge of making my own lunches, dressing myself, and like taking care of myself hygiene-wise, and I just wasn't doing it. So these girls pulled me aside, and when I went back to that moment in meditation, and this is something that I've completely repressed. I had no memory of it, and it wasn't until I asked God or the universe or whatever you want to believe is a higher power than yourself. I went in there and I said, what is the root issue behind my desire for money? Because I know that if I can let go of my desire for money, it's going to attract everything that I've ever wanted into my life. I knew it because I had experienced moments of it. So I go back to this place, and in that moment, what I felt was shame. And you can imagine the shame that a 10 or 11-year-old kid is feeling when the 3 most popular girls are telling me he's a smelly kid in school. There's just so much shame. And I came to the realization through this meditation that everything that I had ever done in my entire life was to impress women, was to not be that kid ever again, to not be the smelly kid in school ever again. And that realization completely changed me, changed my world 100%. And I realized that alcohol was allowing me to be the funny kid and the fun kid. But in that moment, that was the first moment where I had started to put up the wall. I had started to retreat into my shell. And now with the realization that that moment in time had driven everything that I ever wanted to do, I started to come to some other realizations. Everything that I'd ever done in my life was to impress women. So I wanted to make money to impress women. I wanted to sleep with women to show that I was like no longer that smelly kid. I was desirable again. I wanted to learn how to play guitar to impress women. I wanted to own business, have money. All of those things were all about impressing women, and it all came from this moment in time when I had completely repressed. I had no conscious memory of it, but that subconscious moment had driven every single decision I had ever made in my entire life. So this is kind of how this realizations work. And as I went further and further down the road, I started coming to some other realizations. One of them was that in grade 9, I had a really tough time in grade 9. I had a kid that started a rumor about me that said I said I could beat up all the grade 10s. All the grade 10s wanted to fight me every day. I was like hiding out, trying not to get beat up. And that was another wall that I put up. My mother dying was another wall. And what my journey has been since, coming to the awareness early when I was, in my late 20s, that my awareness around food, and then the desire to want more awareness, to crave more, to grow more, that turned into trying to figure out where I had built up walls and how I could remove those walls so I could get back to the closest version of who I truly was without the use of any substances. So that is like a really, really clear-cut picture of how I quit drinking alcohol. And I could create a whole modality around recovery based on this process. But what is most interesting, I think, about this is that I went to a healer in 2005 and said, what is the root issue behind my drinking? And she says self-doubt. And I had no clue what she was talking about, but she had highlighted the root issue. In a 5-minute healing session, she had highlighted the root issue that self-doubt was my problem. It took me another 5 years to finally put the light, bright picture together and make the change. But that awareness that she brought to me was the spark that led me down the journey and the road to eventually saying, okay, I can be without alcohol. So let me just kind of take you now through what has changed for me since I stopped drinking alcohol. One is I'm just 100% completely more aware of who I am, and I continue to go down the road every single day to find greater levels of awarenesses, to grow spiritually, to grow as a person. I'm constantly seeking to move up the levels of consciousness, which I think is the ultimate goal for any human being. I went from being $250,000 in debt. I owed every single person that I knew money. I owed the government money. I owed credit cards money. I owed mortgages. I owed car payments. I went from that to being completely debt-free, and I actually flipped it completely around, and I make amazing money now. I was able to let go of my desire for money, which was a huge shift for me, and it was through that process that I described to you around finding out my why, which is ironic because that's the same process I used to how to get over my addiction to alcohol, was finding out the why. Finding out the why I wanted money allowed me to let go of my desire for money. And once you can let go of your desire for money or anything in this world, that is when it's going to come into your life. And that's what I experienced with money, was that letting go of my desire allowed it to come into my life, and it allowed it to come into my life effortlessly. There was no more grind anymore. I was just flowing, and the money just began to flow into my life. And it wasn't this grind. It was just happening. I was just allowing it to happen. The next thing that happened for me, my relationships improved. I had been notoriously terrible boyfriend, and I finally settled down with one woman. I got married. We're having a baby soon, and I've never been happier than I ever was in my entire life. And even looking back and looking at what people aspire to be these days, you see it in music videos, you see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook, on TV and movies. It's like the party, the guys holding the bottle and like girls all surrounded. And that's what I used to desire, was that attention. But now I came to the realization of who I truly am and what truly makes me happy. And because I've come to those realizations, I realize that all that stuff is phony. So I guess the ultimate thing that came to this, and what I want to leave you with today, is that it just created a greater level of awareness, and it created a yearning for constant growth. I don't have to grow anymore to be happy. I learned how to be happy with who I am in this moment. I was able to break down those walls that alcohol was allowing me to kick down. But when you kick down the walls with a substance, the problem is that the fall is going to be really, really great. And that's where I was getting to a point where after I would be out on a night drinking, I would have like these huge mornings of depression. And the reason being is because the walls were back up, and the walls have even been built up higher because I was creating more circumstances that were making me build up more walls. So ultimately, I just learned how to become myself, and I'm still learning how to become who I truly am. And that is the goal of all spiritual growth, is to get connected with your higher self and stop identifying with the smaller self, which is the ego, which its primary ambition is to be right. And it's going to constantly agree with you and move you down a path where you are the center of the universe. And now I've moved to a place where I want to help people. And that's why I'm sharing this story with you today. And that's why I created Rise Up Rich. A lot of people are asking me, like, what are you doing with Rise Up Rich? Like, what's the business? What's the angle? And yeah, there will be, like, I became a certified coach, and I do one-on-one coaching, and there will be all kinds of stuff that I do with Rise Up Rich. But ultimately right now is that I want to give back and I want to help. I want people to come to this place where happiness is the ROI. I was set in my life where I thought that once I become rich, that's when I'll be happy, and that's when I'll allow myself to be happy. And the only moments of happiness I was experiencing in between were when I was drinking alcohol. But the places in between drinking alcohol and striving to get rich, I was miserable. And even after I quit drinking alcohol, I was miserable. I was kind of like what they call like a dried drunk. And once I came to the realization that I need to figure out how to be happy now with who I am in this moment, that's when everything changed for me. And I shifted my focus from making money and putting my happiness in the future to learning how to be happy with who I was right now. And once I did that, all of those things which I once desired began to flow into my life. And happiness, I was happy, I was content. It didn't matter if I made money, if I didn't, I was happy. It's kind of like the boy likes girl, so he chases after the girl, and the girl just runs further and further away. And eventually, when the boy finally says, forget that girl, I'm done with her, I don't want her anymore, that's when the girl comes running. And that's what happened to me with my desire for money. I finally was able to overcome my desire for money. I was able to overcome my desire for acceptance of others. I got to my root issues. I answered the why. And because I was able to do that, I began to learn how to be happy now. And once I became happy now, everything that I ever wanted in my life began to flow into my life, and it was effortless. And that's what I want for the viewers and the listeners and the followers of Rise Up Rich. I want you to learn how to be happy in this moment without the use of anything. Just be happy with who you are. And once you learn how to do that, all the other stuff works itself out. So thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I hope it was helpful. Please feel free to message me, DM me if you have any questions. I have space for about 4 or 5 clients, coaching-wise. That's one-on-one, 1 hour sessions. If that's something you're interested in, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and I will get back to you and we can set that up. Other than that, stay tuned for the next podcast. I have a ton of great stuff that I am going to be delivering to you guys. And thanks for taking the time to listen. Talk to you next time.